Wagwan, are you there? What's good? And welcome to the Jerk Jollof and Collard Greens podcast, delivering your daily dose on culture and more this summer. And if this is your first time ever tuning in, I'm your host, G. Ranson, and I'm graciously joined by my brothers in bond, D Black, Chunky, and Francis. And for today's discussion, we'll be dropping our opinions on the recent phenomenon of salary sharing. In other words, openly disclosing how much you earn with your friends, family, and colleagues, what that means for wages and earnings, and how to best determine if your pay truly matches your worth, as well as challenges paired with being the sole person of color in the workplace, and whether the quest for creating more diverse work atmospheres is still a meaningful one. But before all of that, before we chop it up with our CP Time segment, where we give our takes on some of the latest happenings in this nation. So definitely stick around for all that and more on the world's most cultured podcast. If you're not already in the know, feel free to check us out on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Jerk Jollof Collard Pod. So without further ado, I've already said their names, but I want them to give them a chance to say a nice little hello to the audience today. My brothers in bond, the JJC panel, D Black, Fran, Chunky. How are y'all fellas doing this summer so far?
Good, man. Y'all chilling. Hot.
I don't know. It's like
How you
90
day?
degrees.
What's good?
In Jersey, I couldn't imagine what Georgia's like.
No. I don't know why I'm here.
Because you live in nice, cool weather.
Nah, man. It's getting
far
hot
from it
here, man. Like it used to be like 1 week out of the year. Now it's like an entire month, and like most places out here don't have AC.
That has to be a crime.
Right.
No AC is a crime.
Bruh, houses are built in 2017 and up, and they don't have AC.
I rebuke it.
Murderation. But all right, it's summertime, which also means it is peak travel season. But if you're a Black American traveling to Jamaica, the Barefoot Island lady, owner of the Minimalist Resort, has got some choice words for you. In an IG post made to her business page in mid-May, she indicated, and starting with quotes, "Not all Black Americans are bad, but the ones that came to my place have been nothing but problem. Only two good ones out of all of them." In other words, there's only been two good Black Americans out of all the Black American tourists she's hosted so far. They fight late at night with each other. They are disrespectful, entitled, unappreciative. It is that way because America has spoiled them and given them so much free shit that they think they can come to Jamaica and get the same free shit and be nasty about it.
Damn.
All right. So, I wanted to start off with this one because amongst all the other things going on, as we all know, travel is a big thing as well. Jamaica being a place where, you know, my people hail from. And as we have this multicultural, multi-ethnic podcast, I wanted to ask you guys first this question. And I just want you to answer yes or no to these first two questions. And then from there, I'll give you guys a chance to explain why. So starting off with the first two questions, should a business owners be allowed to prohibit or limit use of their services to a specific group of people? That's the first one. Yes or no? Second one, do you think she deserved the online backlash received for speaking her mind? So let's start off. I'm just going to go in order from left to right from my visual. We'll go to D Black, Chunky, then Fran. Yes or no? So to the first question, should business owners be able to limit their services or offerings to a group of people? Yes or no?
Damn, that's a tough one.
Just answer yes or no.
And
then you get to explain later.
All right, fine. I'll say yes.
All right. And do you think she deserved the online backlash she received for speaking her mind? Yes or no?
Yes.
All right. Chunky, yes or no?
Yes, no.
Yes. So yes, she can limit, and no, she shouldn't get that backlash.
Chunky's so smooth with it. Yes, no.
And Fran?
No, yes.
No, yes. So dang. We're broken up. All right. So for the yeses, you should be able to limit your offerings as a business owner. Can you explain why you guys feel that way?
Chunky, you go first.
Oh, I mean, you're a private business owner, so you can do whatever you want, right? Is it right? No. But you're able to control who you decide to do business with. So if I'm having a certain class of people come, right? And that's the way I'll break it up. The way I see it is just like, well, my biggest question is like, how much was she charging for people to be there? So depending on how much you charge is going to depend on the crowd you're going to get. If you're at like a little, like, to break it up, not to knock Spirit, but like, you know what you get when you fly in Spirit, right?
You know what you get
when you're flying
know what
like
you get,
Delta or like Alaska or like a higher end company. So you're paying more for services and that ability to have a better environment. So if I decide to say like, hey, I'm going to charge like $4,000 a night to stay here, and that's arbitrary numbers, then I'm going to get a certain class of people. So I look at it that way. So I can limit who I decide to bring in, and that's my choice. Is it technically right? No, but I control that.
D-Bot?
Yeah, I actually resonate with Chunky's explanation there. The only thing for me why I grimaced on that one is because I do agree that, you know, if it's your business, you know, you have the right to do whatever you want with your business, you know. But the reason why I grimaced on it is because some businesses, I mean, I understand in this particular business, maybe it's not like a limited commodity, but if you own a business that controls water, you know, access to water, and then to say we're not going to give it to a certain group of people, you know, that's a necessity. As Chunky takes a delicious sip of his water. Yeah, so that's why that was particularly tough to me. But you know, if her business scales to the level where she owns all resorts, then my response would flip. But in this instance, I would say that's why I said yes.
All right. So for the nose, Fran.
Yeah, I mean, like the keyword in there was the service to a specific group of people. So for me, it's like, I think it's that's cap, man. You should not be able to do that. I understand this if you own a privately owned company, you can make your own decision. But she actually called it out. She specifically called out the group she doesn't want in her business. So, so I don't want her to have the right to do that. So it's my opinion. So that's my take on it.
And
does she have the right to do it because she owns a privately owned company? Yes, but you asked me my opinion, can she or should business owner be allowed to do it? My answer is no.
And then where I stand,
because I mean it's just like it's just feeding into the racism, the stereotype, all the negative stuff that we are trying to battle as a nation, as a race of people. So for me, that's kind of one of the reasons I'm like, okay, I'm not for that. I'm against it, and I'm not gonna continue to feed into the negative things we are trying to, you know.
Well, is it really
like, as a nation
like divisive, right? So what I heard out of what you said is like you own your own company, so you can limit who you give that to. That goes back to the bakery that didn't want to make a cake for a gay couple. So they have the right to say no. You
right.
Can go I mean, you go to another bakery.
Yeah, but my saying like, yeah, in the social norm that we are living right now, yes, people have the right to do whatever they want. The question is, should business owner be allowed to? For my standard for living, my answer is no. I don't want people to say no. So you should not be able to say no to kind of service. People are, if they want your service, you should be able to give them your service. Period.
I mean, but you're not a public entity, right? So going back to D-Black's
point, get it. I know, but like this is not the ideal state, right? You asked me what my opinion is. Like, as in my ideal state, I'm not talking about the social norm as of today. My social norm in a non-idea is for people not be able to say no. I get it. I know it doesn't make sense, but this is my opinion, and I'm sticking by it. It is what it is.
I didn't say it makes sense. What I'm saying is, like, you're saying social norms today. It's been that way. Like, this isn't a fad today. Like, you were able to deny people from coming into your business. And
just like they were able to tell Black people not to come to the movie theaters, not to go to a group,
so to draw that comparison, I think it's pretty wild, right? To say like you're going back to pre-civil rights era to say like, oh well, blacks eat here, white eats there, just
But
because
that's kind of pretty much what we're doing, though, bro.
I mean, if
you
you
know, you
think
can't
about
just
it, though,
justify. You can't
So-
justify like, oh, it
pricing
doesn't.
out a group of people is another method of doing that without
Yeah.
actually
But
saying it.
once-
Like, because you know
once-
that just
once
people can't
again-
afford a certain degree
Exactly.
of service.
So
You're
I
pricing them
want
out.
a certain demographic to come, right? If I know I'm
Right.
going to invite people, they're going to trash my shit because it's at a low price. I'm going to have to deal with that, right? So I'm targeting like people that are responsible, people that are reasonable. So yes, I'm going to increase the price for the crowd that I want to bring in.
Right, Chunky. I know that's what like racism
method,
is
though.
nowadays. Like,
No,
right?
what?
Because
Like,
companies
wait, okay,
can't
wait.
companies can't come
All
out
right,
and
hold on.
verbally talk
All right.
about it. So
I
they
think,
use different
like, so
methodology
let me
to
just put this out
discriminate
there.
and separate people from what they can and cannot
that-
afford.
I'm gonna
Right.
just put this out there, and then I know we got to press forward. I don't want to start an argument,
It's not an argument.
but like class and race are two different things, right? You can have a race that's divided up into different social classes. So
Yes.
is that top social class in the black race racist against other black people beneath them?
Yeah, but like it was like that during the racism. Like black people were selling other black people. What you talking about?
I think you're
Like,
missing. You're
I mean,
missing
I know,
what
I
I'm-
know what you're. I know, I do
let's-
get what you're trying to say, Chunky.
Yeah,
I get it,
yeah.
but what I'm trying to say is, it makes sense from what you're explaining to me. I get it, but what I'm saying is, I don't understand it. So
That's
call
completely
bullshit.
fine. Like it's hard. Like to me, it's hard to draw that. Like that's a very tight line to draw that comparison, right? And like to me, that's going to open up the aperture for another episode. So I hear you, I understand. I don't take away from it, but I think that's like a lot of unpacking there, and I don't think we have enough time
Yeah.
to like unpack that.
All right,
Yeah.
I get
Because I
it.
mean, you can say in fairness that you could charge more and you still get some asshole people at the end of the day. But
Yeah.
without a doubt, it is a tactic used by businesses to kind of attract a certain crowd of people because you know that there's an association with wealth and class and whatever the case may be. But I agree, like businesses do have the right to limit their services, but I just don't like the way she went about it per se, like with the call out. So like do what most businesses would have done anyway. Charge more. Like what she did for her business, she's no longer doing short-term stays. So you have to spend a month or more to get a booking with her. So it's just like, you know, you look at some of the feedback that she was getting online, which is the next part of the question. To me, it wasn't deserved, but it was expected because, I mean, where we at today, like it's a very heavy statement that she made.
Yeah.
Even though she tried to say it's not all of y'all, but some of y'all. And it's just like, when you take it, you know, maybe from someone, if it was like a white person saying it, that would have probably been another story right then and there, because it's kind of like, how do you guess someone's character just by the color of their skin, right? You don't, with us, you don't really know what you're getting. Like the same reason why you have like, you know, Jamaicans that distinguish themselves from Black Americans till this day. You have Africans that distinguish themselves from Black Americans this day. It's like all these distinctions being made to show that, hey, we're not just one big consolidated group. But I guess to take on the responses online, and then I'll ask you guys, whoever wants to answer them, the who wants smoke questions, where basically let's get a little bit more controversial with the questions. But as far as the online backlash received and whatnot, what's your guys' final say on that? I know, Fran, you said no, yes. So
Yeah, she deserved it. I mean, she opened her mouth and she got what she like. Just like my cousin always said, live with the consequences.
That's
I
it.
mean, I think I was on who said social consequences, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, whoever
I think
said
we both are. We
consequences,
all
whatever,
agree
right?
on the consequences.
Hey, you know, Chunky, the truth is the consequences line is associated with my cousin, so he claimed that, unfortunately. But
Yeah, I guess
we'll have to go back and listen
but yeah,
You're in
pull
a
out the
spicy
tape.
mood today.
with the pull
Pull out
tape.
the tape.
Who hurt you at work?
What you mean?
Oh,
I'm good, bro.
It's about to be a good one today. But no, but seriously, I just, as my cousin said, that's why I said yes. She needs to be aware of and again, I don't believe deserved is basically, I define that basically on, you know, the atmosphere you're throwing that into. It's like saying jumping into a lion's den and you get your head bitten off. Like you don't want to get your head bitten off, but it's gonna happen. So if you throw a statement like that into this social environment where everyone's extremely, I'll say PC, inclusive, all of these things, and good or bad for however you want to take it, you are going to receive the backlash for saying a statement that is not inclusive. So that's just a natural consequence of it.
Mm.
And again, and one more thing, just to close up my thought. Even though she has the right as a business owner to not, in my opinion, to not allow whoever she wants to, she still is indirectly perpetuating a narrative for Black people, even if it's from her own anecdotal experience. And that's it. I'm done with that.
I mean, whatever.
Facts.
Honestly, my opinion is this: that does she deserve it? No. But that's your First Amendment. You can say whatever you want. Be able to deal with the result of what you say. That's it. So pretty much, I truly believe that she was ignorant in the way that she made her statement. And to be honest, it seems like a social class issue, right? So she can't divide like, oh, well, I'm going to say like, oh, these two Black people that I had were good. My question is like, what was their social status or economic status, right? So like they made more money, you're gonna be more responsible. I look at it like, all right, if I'm renting out to lower income people, we all have an idea of how that will go, right? So it's making a generalization, and I can be wrong in that generalization, but typically speaking, when you give things to people who aren't really responsible, shit's gonna happen, right? And fiscal responsibility takes a lot of maturity, understanding, and education to be able to maneuver through that. You can't have your average American manage hundreds of thousands of dollars successfully without being properly educated. So like I said, the way that she went about it was not the best way. In my opinion, she was ignorant in the statements that she made, so she got the results for her action. But when I look at it in a different perspective or a different lens, it seemed like she has an issue with a specific social class. Now, if she has a specific issue with just Black Americans, she can go fuck herself, right? Because I completely agree in the sense that you can't sit here and just group people and saying like, hey, this is what happened, this is what's going on. I'm not going to rent the Black people anymore or lease the Black people anymore because this is what you're going to do. And yes, again, perpetuating a stereotype that's not really true. We have enough on us already given the history. We don't need another person that can be grouped into our race to speak negatively against us. There's a better way to approach it.
Well, you said she was well, you said what she did was cool, so I mean
no, if you heard what I said, like she has the right to say the right to say what she's got to say, but there's a result to it.
Right? Yeah.
That's it.
I'm just saying. Go on, next topic.
Like you are spicy today. Like this is rare form. This is going to be.
Can I ask one question though?
Intense.
Can I ask one question? Because I feel like I've dealt with this in a personal sense from someone else that I like a coworker from years ago. If someone's anecdotal experience is limited to just what, like for her experience, right? Her limited experience in this stratosphere, she's rented out to 10 Black families, Black individuals, and all of them had the same experience. Like she had the same negative experience. Now, does that mean that that stereotype applies to every Black American? No. But from her world, her little experience, the two.
Oh, you just chopped up there on that last bit.
Oh. I was saying, like, I'll just repeat really quick. I was saying, so because of her experience was within that small group of Black people, that is her only experience. She didn't have any positive experiences within a group of Black people. Even if society says that we shouldn't do that, from her experience, that's what she has. So, I mean, instead of shunning her, in my opinion, why don't we just help her change the narrative? Introduce her to other Black people that are positive, well-educated, well put together, that know how to manage a vacation place. I think this is, well, we covered this on cancel culture, but I think this will lead to canceling her, which I don't think is the right direction. But
You know
I just
what's
don't know
funny?
how.
I mean, but I think in a way, isn't that kind of sounds like, you know, how like some white, like our coworkers. I know we're gonna get into those topics, but why
Mhm.
can't they be more like you?
No, I don't think that's the same. I think
I
it's a little
mean, because
different.
like because we kind of in a way saying like, you
Kind of,
know,
it's the same.
yeah, because we are saying like not all of us are the same, like, but some of us act a certain way. And but so if we get different type of black people into your establishment, you will see the different version of us, which
Mhm.
is kind of sounds like white people like, why can't they all just be like you? Because
I see what you're saying.
that's their experience with maybe
So
someone like us,
I
right?
would caveat that.
I'm not saying it's a bad. I'm just saying like it kind
No,
of
no,
feed into that too, like,
I would caveat it in a sense
Yep.
that if you're looking for a certain caliber of person, you're gonna reach into a different pool of people, right? So I'm looking at
Facts.
higher at it like an IT person, right? I'm not going to pull from someone that's a technical mechanical engineer. I'm going to pull from a pool of people that are ITs.
Well,
So why can't they
technically,
be?
I have my mechanical engineering, and I'm
I
IT.
wasn't. So why? You are in rare form. Like, I'm not targeting you. It's like mechanical and like IT are two, to me, two different
Yeah,
fields.
no,
Like
I
if
know what you're
someone's
trying to say.
working,
Yep, go on. I
yeah,
just had to give you shit for that.
yo, you fuck you.
But I know you could definitely
Can
say
you
like
feel
to make a
the
yeah.
generalization
Tension
on
is
like
high.
tonight?
Tension is high. It's been a while since that's happened. So yeah, without a doubt, I think it's the caliber of person you're looking for versus the specific group of people you're looking at, right? So if I want a specific type of person that has specific type of qualities, I'm going to reach into that particular pool. So when I say I wish I had more people like you, like as a leader, I wish I had more individuals that are like someone that's my subordinate. And to me, it doesn't matter what the race, gender, religion of my subordinate is. I just want more of you so the job can be better, right? Why
Mhm.
can I have multiple copies of you because you get stuff done at a faster rate than most? Not to say that everyone else is bad, but there's a certain type of quality you have that I specifically like, and that's going to change depending on a person or leader, right? And Fran, you ain't shit.
I love
yeah.
you.
I would
I
just
love you
say
too.
like I think where the mistake happens is just basically just generalizing a group of people based on their ethnicities or race. So like we can't really get a good definition of who they are as a person. It's just a very tricky situation at all times. So
Mhm.
it's just best do what all these other businesses do, right? And employ pricing mechanisms and whatever, because like I said, you could even get to a higher class of people and there's still some indecency there. Still have people that are make more and they're just as a pain in the ass as others, but just that stray away from that generalization from a people just on an identifying factor, nothing to do with their character. So I guess I'll drop into this who wants smoke question before we jump into the topic. That being, are we harder on Black businesses as people of color than non-Black businesses? And I guess what's your take on that? Do we enforce stricter standards for businesses ran by people of color, or are we more lenient? What's your guys' take on that?
I'll go quick. I think for me in general, at least again, just Hotlanta, I feel like there's a mindset a little bit more lenient. Um, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I feel like a business standard should be kept to a certain standard. You have expectations for a business, it should be to that standard, regardless of the race that's running it.
Gotcha.
And that's just my opinion. But I do feel like in Hotlanta, because it's, oh, you gotta support this business because it's Black owned, and or yeah, the service is bad, but you can't say that, but because it's a small Black owned business, like no, it's bad, it's bad.
Mm.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with my cousin. I mean, so I think if a company is not doing what they're supposed to, you should give them a fair review like you would do any other company. So I think that's really what it comes down to. But in reality, yeah, we do have this my sister, this kind of love thing fest going on among each other when we do run into one another. when they are operating any kind of business that we hire them for. So I guess, the problem is with us because we do have this love fest going on. And also I think it is on the business people also to deliver so we can kind of keep that same energy moving forward to other businesses as well. And I know we'll talk about it because we can relate this to the work we do as well, kind of setting the foundation for other people that may come after or before. So it's really kind of ties to that as well for me.
I think it's skewed. I don't expect a startup business or if it's a Black business comparable to like a multi-billion-dollar company, multi-million-dollar company, yes, I expect you to perform a certain way. But if it's a mom and pop shop, I ain't gonna be that hard on you. Because like I don't expect you to operate like Olive Garden or does Ruby Tuesday still exist? Or Fridays or whatever the case may be.
It's still out there.
I'm like, hey, like you're providing a service, you're starting up, your staff is limited because your finances are limited. And which plays back to like Black business owners getting loans that they should get that they don't get, right? So you're working with what you have to your best capability. Am I going to hit you for that? No, that's kind of fucked up, right? Now, if you're giving true shitty service where it's just like I ordered a meal, the shit's coming out an hour later and it's only some French fries, problem. But at the end of the day, it's just like, hey, I have to be smart enough to put everything together. Like you're operating the best you can. You're friendly. The service is good. The food was good. It may take a little bit longer than what I'm used to, but I understand the type of environment that I'm in. This is like a mom and pop business or a startup business. So I'm willing to give grace and understanding and really give a true evaluation of what I just experienced instead of comparing it to a company that's been long standing for 30, 40 years.
Gotcha. And I personally feel like, to wrap up, that we are a little harder on Black businesses opposed to non-Black businesses, and a little bit of the expected leniency sometimes. Like I've seen some Black businesses where their business model basically was substantiated on the basis of them being a Black business. And to me, it's kind of like, all right, you're not going to survive just being a solely because you're a Black business in this era. Like you got to have a legit model. You got to have a legit service. You got to have some value. And another reason why I would tell, because I go to a lot of like business pop-ups and things like that to see what some of the local businesses are. And a lot of the times you see some up and coming entrepreneurs and it's like the same thing over and over again, like candles, merchandise, sneakers, cake mix, desserts in the cup. And it's just like, yo, we can do much more than this with a little bit more, support perhaps, or a little bit more guidance. So definitely don't let your Blackness be the only thing pushing your business to succeed. But, at the same time, I feel like if we encourage one another in these endeavors, then for sure we can get that service standard that we're expecting, or that we should learn to expect from a Black business as well, as opposed to a non-Black business. But remember, the Rep Your Words was a big thing about the podcast too. So go ahead and check that out if you want to go dig in the vaults and check out our early work. But without further ado, let's chop. And the first half of this discussion, does your pay match your worth? And let's start off with the first question real quick. I know we kind of touched on this before, but I like how it ties into the next question. What are your thoughts on salary sharing, or basically sharing your salary info with friends, family, colleagues? Is this a good or bad idea? Would you do it personally before you answer that? And do you think this is a good or bad idea? Whoever wants to hop on first.
I guess I can go. Would I share my salary? Yes. We talked about this last 2 episodes ago. I think it's important to do it. There are use cases when I think it's ideal to share it. It's not something that you just go around telling everyone, obviously. There are scenarios where I think it's appropriate to do. Even when we posted it on social media, shout out to Joe. One of the comments that he posted is, not sharing your salary is a way of keeping poor people poor. And I think it's so critical because how do you know if you are underpaid, really, if you don't talk about it? And I feel like if there's a way for you, if you don't feel comfortable enough sharing your salary, for example, let's talk about sharing it with your family. If you can't share it with your family, how do you feel the confidence to talk about it with your colleagues or even with your boss and is superior and the HR partners? It is a conversation that you have to navigate in a very mature and it's more strategic conversation, right? And I think there's a way to go about it. And if you don't feel comfortable talking about it in the first place, how can you actually present yourself in a way to your boss where you can actually convince them and show your value and your worth to them, where they can maybe actually increase your pay if you are being underpaid. So for me, it's and I get it. Sometimes people are nervous to talk about it because they don't want to find out they make less among their peers or make more, because in a way. And actually, I was watching a interview by DC Young Fly actually just a couple of days ago, and he was talking about some people. There's a difference when people imagine what they think you make versus when they actually know how much you make. There's a sense of jealousy and envy that may come from that. So I get that side of things where people kind of shy away from that topic, but there's also so many good and so many positive in people that you are potentially impacting, and your friends who maybe didn't realize how much they should be paid if they maybe like they found out what someone like yourself is making and it relates to maybe the work they do, or maybe somebody they know who's maybe in the same shoe, they can relay those information like, oh, I have a friend who's doing the same thing that you do, and this is the number he told me is kind of like the range or the ballpark that he's in, and the person can say, oh, I fit into that range, or you could say, oh my God, I'm like 20-30% underpaid, and then that could actually trigger some conversation, or you can then do additional research, and we'll kind of get into that later. But for me, that is why I'm for it. I think, like I said, it comes back to the people you are sharing it with. There has to be a reason behind it. It has to be for a purpose, and yeah. So I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, so picture this scenario then. You discover that you're being paid significantly less than your colleagues for doing perhaps the same amount of work or even more work. Like, what would you do at that point, or what would your next step be?
Yes, easy. There's multiple things you could do, and some are easier than others. But the first thing I do is I will like actually put a list, and this is something that actually I've done personally, and is you have to actually put together your value. You have to kind of put a list of the work that you're doing, because at the end of the day, you have to be able to you have to want to be doing the work, right? Your performance review has to be top notch. You have to be exceeding or at least achieving your goals, right? Because all of us are measured based on our performance. If your performance is up to par, that gives you the confidence to actually have that conversation with your boss. If you're not exceeding or actually achieving your goal, this you don't. Why would they increase your pay if you're not bringing any value to the group? So when you do that, so that is the first key thing, right? When that is met, then you can actually put together a list of values that you actually bring to the team. It could be to your team, how much work you do. It could be to your function. It could be the collaboration outside of the team that you bring. There are some project that you do in your team that has a ROI attached to it. You can actually measure those. Like, okay, there are some cost savings based on some of this project I've done and some of the initiatives that I've driven or that I've supported. So after you kind of make that list, you can do additional research, go online and see what the numbers are showing. I know some people like to maybe apply for a job externally, find out what your actual worth is, because that's really what sometimes drive the conversation. You know, like who decide what your worth is, right? So you can also take that route, get a like external offer and bring it back into your employer, and they see if they match it. But if you kind of leave that at the door, you can just do some online research, see what the numbers are showing, and you are meeting some of those qualifiers that I mentioned earlier. Have a meeting with your boss, let them know like this is kind of what I'm hearing, this is the numbers I'm hearing around. Can you please look at my number and make sure it matches with the rest of everyone in my role. And then, and based on that conversation, if you are a value employee, I would imagine your boss would take that input because they don't want to lose you, right? Because it will cost them more to actually bring a new employee in, train them, all of that stuff. And they have to pay that person more money anyway, because when they bring a new employee in. So for them, it makes more sense.
What's so I'm gonna throw a wrench in it.
Yep.
So you're looking at two different companies. You look at how much those two different companies bring in. So with that being said, if they can't increase your salary because they just don't have the money, will that bother you? Like, hey, we just can't afford it. But you're doing amazing work. You're great. You're amazing. But the bottom line is, we're paying you what we have. That's it. We want to pay you more. So will that deter you? Like, oh well, I'm out. I'm gonna switch to a different company. I'm gonna go to where the grass is greener.
Yeah, why not? I mean, it really comes back to, because I think the work-life balance comes into play as well. The quality of life. What is your value? Because for me, like right now, I know I can leave to another company and make like 30% more, right? When we talk about like, are you getting paid what you're worth? No, because I know I could go somewhere else and make more, right? But the reality is, what is your work-life balance? Are you happy where you are at? Do you feel value, just not from a pay perspective, from the day-to-day operation of stuff, right? Like those are some of the key elements that you do have to kind of evaluate. Does it make sense? But if you do get an offer somewhere else and it's way more than then you have to. That's an easy decision sometimes. But sometimes people don't pick the money over.
But you brought up a valid point.
Yeah,
that value, that work-life balance. I'm going to pay you 20 grand more than what you're making, but you're not going to have that work-life balance.
Right. And some people take offers just because of the money every day. Right. So it's really based on, it's individual based, right? It's really what drives you. Right. So if your focus is, I want to make as much money I can make, then yes, chase the money. Cause I know people who do that. But if you are getting, for me, I'm getting constant growth in my company. Like I'm getting promotion, I'm getting opportunities to learn, I'm getting opportunity to do different things. So for me, there hasn't really been a reason for me to just bounce just for the money, because I know they are investing in my future. So like, it's really having that conversation. I think really what it comes down to though, having a manager who trusts and value you, because that goes a long way. The manager that you have is really the person that will go, because yes, to your point, your manager might say, yes, I agree, you might be underpaid. Let me take it to my boss, take it to my HR partner. They may not approve it, right? He's not the only person actually approving the salary. There are other people who also have to approve it. So there are so many different layers to it. That's why you also, because you have that conversation today, it does not mean they will increase your pay tomorrow. It could be a 6-month journey where like maybe it's during your yearly review when they actually give you the increase that you need. So there's a level of patience, and you have to know how to play the game. Really, that's what it comes down to.
Here's a question.
That's the part.
Like, I can't pay you more, but I'm willing to give you more vacation. I'm willing to give
that's fine. You could get more even stocks, options too. Like there's different ways to like still pay someone, right?
I mean, it's not your traditional like quote unquote pay. Your salary isn't increasing, but your value is being shown because your company is willing to work with you with the means that they have.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, and you have to be willing to, then you have to make a decision, is that good enough for me? Because I mean, if you have a growing family and like, okay, this 20% actually is gonna pay for daycare, then you have to make that decision. Okay, I'm gonna have to work my ass off a little bit more than I'm used to. Maybe I'm gonna have to work during dinner now because I'm not doing it right now. But in reality, we do need this extra money. Then you do have to make that tough decision. So it's easier to say yes and no. I'm gonna take the money. I'm not gonna take the money. But life sometimes make the decision for you. So there are so many different layers to it.
Gotcha. All right, so let's jump into the next aspect of this then, because sometimes you'll hear the argument that this job doesn't pay enough, but sometimes it can be maybe the industry you're in is just not a high yielding industry. But do you feel wages should be determined by the level of difficulty or demand associated with the type of work being executed? or should it be based on other factors such as performance, cost of living, or the type of value you bring to your organization? And I know one of the examples that inspired this question was the recent article that came out about Vanna White on Wheel of Fortune, and essentially how she hasn't seen a pay increase in years, I believe, despite making a base salary of about $3 million plus bonuses for being on the show for over 40 years. And if you ask most people that are Wheel of Fortune fans, they'll tell you she's just as integral towards the show as the main host. So, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on this? And I'll start off with D Black because he hasn't had a chance to say anything yet. Do you feel like the difficulty or demand with the work should be one of those factors that determine how much you get paid?
Yeah. I guess and before I even answer that, yeah, like, Fran kind of killed that response. I think you hit up every single point that I could even think of as well. So well done, kudos to you on that one. And then so to answer this, I'll just say yes. And the reason why I say yes is because it should be incorporated on all of those things. I mean, it should be determined based on all of those things. We live in a supply and demand industry, a supply and demand world. The more we demand something, the more of demand, and the lower of a supply, the higher the value of that item is. And that even goes for services as well, not just goods. So that's the first part. Now, within that, once you've established that value based on supply and demand, then you can start adding in those other metrics of quality, performance, skill set, and all of those other things. And that's where we bracket ourselves within a respective work group. That's why you may have a colleague. And I think that's the one piece that we always tend to miss, is that just because you've been in an industry for the same amount of time does not automatically equal better performance. Just because you've been in this industry doing the same work for the same amount of time, that does not mean that you are of the same caliber of someone else. It is what it is. And you can improve yourself, you can find other ways to add more value, but that doesn't mean just because you've been doing this for 5 years, they've been doing this for 5 years, you both should be making the same amount of money. Yet maybe on the team you are the lowest performer. I would never agree with that type of mindset. So, even with the Wheel of Fortune situation, I mean, I know $3 million, I feel like that's aged pretty well. If she's been making it for how long she's been making it. But again, it's hard to say because I've never been like the most avid Wheel of Fortune watcher, but if she is that integral to the show, she should be able to justify that. And if they're afraid that she walks off, they would probably pay her more because they feel like maybe they'll lose revenue. You can't just threaten to leave and then they replace you with a younger person or a different person and the show goes on. So I think, anyway, so to answer the overall kind of question again, overall, yes, supply and demand is always going to be the first driver of how much you make. And, performance, cost of living, all those things do need to be incorporated at some different, at a degree.
I think the part that I always struggle with is the cost of living part. I agree with everything you said, but my thing is like, okay, I think it's BS that me and you are doing the same thing, but because I live in Iowa and you live in Silicon Valley, we're doing the same type of work. You are making 200K more than I am. Like, why? You know what I'm saying?
So I can.
It's like I think it's unfair because I think that part I think is not fair because we should all be getting the same.
It's not. So if you look at basing it off of like cost of living, right? So I'm gonna pay you 200K the same as D Black, right? Because your cost of living is expensive. I'm trying to retain D Black. He doesn't want to move from Silicon Valley. You don't want to move to Silicon Valley. You want to stay where you're at. So your base pay is technically the same. But being that he's living in Silicon Valley, I'm going to pay him more to stay there.
I mean, I get it. I mean, I'm just saying I don't like it. I mean,
Good.
it makes
All right,
sense. I know,
cool.
I get
That's
it,
it.
but I don't like it.
Like if a loaf of bread in one place costs
You
$10,
agreed.
a
That's
loaf of
all I
bread is
need. We're
$5,
good.
and another place costs $5. You know,
I
the
mean,
company.
there's like, yes, you want to normalize the numbers. So you have to put those multipliers in there, but it's just I don't know.
Everybody's just
Yeah.
gonna move to Silicon Valley. That's all.
And
The
like,
only one,
and
it don't
But
make a
not,
difference.
but not
You're not
everybody
making more money.
can
That's the
Right,
thing. You're
perform
Not,
implementing
for
it.
Silicon
not
Valley.
everyone's still gonna
exactly,
make.
exactly.
You're not
You
making more
balance
money.
out the same because you look at the cost of living and you like actually do the numbers. It is the same thing because his rent in Silicon Valley is what, $4,000, and the rent over in Iowa, you can speak to this better than I can, D Black. It's like 1,500, right? So there's going to be a disparity. So in order
Yeah.
for you to live where you're at, in order for you to buy groceries or buy gas, like that's where you're at. So I have to pay that amount for you to sustain so you can continue working for my company. If I paid you the same as someone in Iowa, you won't be able to drive in, you can't get food, and you can't live anywhere. So how can you be productive at work?
And the only other thing I'll add on that is that people need to understand that it goes both ways. When you move out of Silicon Valley, don't expect that salary to stay the same. If they are making an adjustment based on cost of living, they're like, oh, why you cut my wage? Like, no, because now you're in an area where the cost of living is significantly cheaper. So they're going to pay you less to match that.
Mm.
So if you want it to go up when you move to a more expensive area, you should expect it to go down when you move to a less expensive area.
So that means you move, don't change that address for the company log. Just
Oh.
relocate and keep that salary.
That's called
Silicon
fraud.
salary.
Quick way to get fired.
Not if they don't know. They don't know.
P.O. box,
If you're coming
baby.
into work, how can you
I
have an
know.
address in California if you're coming into work in Iowa?
Work
P.O. box,
remotely.
baby.
They not gonna know. Remote.
Like,
I do
what?
not promote or advocate the use of.
Well, here you
Any of
go.
that.
That's free game right there. Okay.
Yeah, free game for you to get fired.
Okay. All
Fire.
right, so let's drop these last two before we jump to this representation piece. And Chunky, I'll aim this one towards you. Do you believe wage disparities still exist amongst genders, races, or even generations for that matter? I know we were just talking about how pay can vary based on your cost of living and performance and value and demand, but are some of us getting a free, or are some of us getting an equal share right at the door upon hiring? Or do you feel like there are some disparities, or there are some cases where because you're a person of color or you're a woman, you may make less than maybe a white male counterpart doing the same exact type of work? Like, what's your take? Does disparity still exist today, or is that like just as the numbers and this is the numbers thing with the employer that we're working with?
I'm not big on feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just talk fact. So statistically speaking, correct me if I'm wrong, this still exists.
Well, that's what the number says. Yeah.
Right. So there's nothing I have to say to that. Statistically speaking, this is still a thing. So it's
Yeah.
not about how I feel or what I think or where I'm coming from. It's just like, that's what it is. Is it unfortunate? Yes. Should it change? Yes. Is it going to change? Who knows, right? So if you're a private company, you control your wages. Do I think it's fair? No. But when it comes down to caliber of work, you should get paid based off your caliber of work. And with everything that D Black said, with that whole package of like your performance, what you know, what you can do, and the value that you bring to your team. Your gender shouldn't matter. Period. So
Right.
That's my sticking point. There's nothing else I can say besides that this is statistics, this is fact, this is the way it should be. Will it get there? We have to fight for that to get there, right? And do we fight for it to be legal and the court system does something about it, looping back to affirmative action? Or do we sit there as a society and push that out, saying like, hey, I'm going to rally with my friends, don't work for that company? What's the most powerful thing now? Social media. I can put a company on blast and bring down their value because I have enough people behind me to say something. I can increase a company's value because of what I say. So use that to your advantage. I can't tell you whether to be a hero or a villain, but if you really want change, that seems to be the most predominant way in today's society.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons companies are so secretive about income is because they know there is disparities with income. That's why they always tell people don't talk about it. And there's a reason why there's now transparency wage transparency is a thing now. Like I don't know how many states are now required to post the salary wages when they post their jobs not online, because there's a reason for that, right? And you see how like some company are even trying to work around that and put a crazy amount of range in those numbers now. Like it's like 100K range, like for income wise. So, but yeah, but I think it's just so crazy. But ultimately, you have to do fight for it individually, though. That's the unfortunate side of things. Because I do know a friend who has gotten a bump because of she was a woman at work, and she says, "Oh, my male counterparts are making way more than me." So they look at it, they give her a bump. So like it's like the same thing for even getting a promotion. Sometimes if you don't say anything about promotion, your boss would think you are fine where you're at. I've seen occasion like that where people are stuck in the same position for many years, even though they are, I want to like the high performance, but because you didn't voice to your upper manager or part of your like yearly conversation about career goals, career aspirations, you don't talk about I want to be promoted, I want to do something else. They think, oh, this guy is just good where he's at. He doesn't want any promotion, so we'll just keep quiet. And I called BS on that too. Actually, I was part of a meeting where I called out. I was in a meeting full of VPs, and they were talking about this was a conversation. It was actually a meeting that was driven by from an African descent network thing that they did, and I was part of it, and ultimately I challenged the leaders in the call. I was like, okay, so I get it, like, so you have to vocalize and you have to drive your own career, but why isn't your manager also driving your career with you? Why isn't it a partnership?
Who
I
cares
get
more
it,
about your
but
career
I
than
mean,
you?
but like this is the question. I'm just telling my actual experience. I asked the question that why, if one of your colleagues is doing a superior job, why can't that be a conversation like, hey, one of my colleagues is doing well. Are you interested in getting a promotion? Are you content where you're at? Versus just don't talk about it. And to be fair to the VP in the call, she gave me a wonderful answer and I actually fell in love with her. I was like, you know what? I love what you're doing right now. I love the program. I thought the vision behind it was excellent. But it showed me how fortunate I was, because I realized how many people in that call that wasn't getting a promotion. I've been stuck in the same role for many years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, so you do have to vocalize what you want. If you don't talk about it, you might get stuck. So, and it's a fight sometimes.
And I'll just add really quick that your managers, one thing, Chunky, I know you were alluding to that, it's on you, as the individual, you need to advocate for yourself more than anyone. No one's going to advocate for you more than you. But the manager's job is not just to make sure that you clock in and clock out on time. They're ultimately supposed to ensure that you develop skills to better facilitate the role that you're doing. They're supposed to make you a better employee, help you become a better employee, to help improve the overall company as a whole. So yes, they should be having conversations with you about growth and advancement and all of those types of things, and progressions, and what you want to see within your future. They need to have those conversations with you. It is literally their job to do that.
It's in their roles and responsibilities.
Yes, it is.
So if it is fine.
Well, for some companies, not every company, but at least for the people that I manage,
that's what I'm saying. So you're looking at managers versus leaders, right? And there's a stark difference between the two.
Yeah.
So if I'm your manager, I'm making sure that you have the tools that you need to be successful for the company, not necessarily yourself. So we're getting the company to move forward. As a leader, I'm invested in you, your growth, the company's growth, and anything else in between I can do for you. So if you bring me a problem or an issue, we'll discuss it. If you want an increase in your salary, we'll discuss it. As a manager, it's like, oh, you're here. You're doing what you're supposed to do. Oh, you need more training? There you go. Oh, you want more money? So technically, this is what's going on. I'm going to just be the in-between. That's my job of being a manager. It's not going to happen. You can bring it up if you want. You can bypass me, or I'm going to hold the keys to your success. But a leader is like, okay, cool. Here's your problem. Here's what you can read in the manual. Here's what you can look at. Here's another resource. Here's someone you can reach out to. All right, are you happy? Oh, you're going to leave the company? Cool. what do you need from me to help you with your exit strategy? Because I'm invested in you as a human being, right? Because when you leave the company, you're not going to talk shit about it. Like, hey, I dislike my job. Hey, this Helly wasn't that great. But this manager actually helped me leave. So how bad is that person? How bad is that manager if they're a leader? They're looking for your success. And if I'm invested in you and I show you value, how likely are you to leave? You said it before. You want to know your value in the company. And I'm giving you that value as your leader.
Yeah, I think the issue is
That's
a
a
lot
good
of
distinction.
leaders, people like we were talking about money before. I think some people take the leadership role because of the pay. They get like,
Yep.
you get this like bump in pay, but you are actually are not ready to be a people
A leader.
manager.
Mm.
You know, for me, because I'm in that
Snapping.
position
God
right
damn.
now. I mean, I'm in that position right now where like I'm data aligned to a group of people in my group, and I'm like responsible for them. But I keep telling myself, oh, man, I am not ready to be an actual manager because of the what comes with it. You know, you do your team meeting, but not even including actual like you know, the performance review, all of this stuff, actually helping them grow in their career and all of that stuff. It's actually there's a level of stress that comes with it that I know I'm just not there mentally for yet. Even though like, and just getting a glimpse into that world, I'm like, okay, I'm not ready.
What
But I
if you
think
get
Good
a
for
lot
you.
of
Good for you to have enough wherewithal to know that.
exactly, but I think people, managers, a lot of managers don't think about it like that, like knowing what they want, what they don't want. I like where I'm at, where I'm just data line, I'm managing the team, all of that, but nothing else, right?
But if I'm willing to train you? If I'm
What?
saying like, hey, you have the capacity and the capability, understand you're not ready yet, I'm going to put you in a pipeline program for you to move up into the next level. I'm going to give
No,
you.
it's not the train. I know I could do it. I just don't want to take on the stress that comes with that.
Mhm.
I'm not ready to take that on. So
That's
for
completely
me, I
fine.
just know I don't even need to. But the question is, if somebody come in and show me the bag, right?
It'd be hard to turn
Oh,
that
that
down.
Show me the
bag.
bag, right?
So
Like you still
Then that's
paying
where I feel like
mortgage
some
and
managers
tuition and
make
all
the
that.
decisions to then just take the bag. When you have to like, okay, I'm
That-
actually ready for this, or just take it on just because of the money. So it's like, you know,
Yeah.
expectation of a manager. I'm gonna be honest with you. Like I said, to me, there's a difference between the manager and the leader. You're
right,
going after the
exactly.
bag, you're a
And I
manager.
think people take that on usually are just managers versus leaders, right?
Hey,
Mhm.
So and you have to
Right.
kind of know
doing
that.
what they're doing. They're doing what they're doing best. So I can't be mad at it.
So let's move on to the next one. Great responses all around. So making sure that you get paid for your work is the first obstacle, right? And I think that's make sure you're getting paid what you're supposed to be getting paid is the first obstacle. But let's talk about what happens when you actually are in the workplace, but particularly as a person of color. And I think diversity has been a big topic since COVID. Well, actually, since George Floyd and all the way through COVID, diversity in the workplace has been a really big topic of discussion, how it's being implemented. And as you all know, recently, Supreme Court voting down the racial implications to the affirmative action, what that means for the future. And that's probably going to be a whole nother podcast discussion there. But D Black, I want to start off with this question with you. Is diversity in the workplace essential? And is there a particularly best way to achieve it, in your opinion?
Is diversity essential? Yes, diversity is essential. And I mean, depends on how you define diversity. But even with that being said, different walks of life, different life lived experiences, they all end up bringing different values to a specific organization, department, project, task. They may think of something that maybe you didn't think of, different education streams. All of that is essential to make the most robust workforce that you can, I mean, that I guess that you can ultimately develop. And the best way to achieve it is to always, I will say that, you know, one way that was proposed was like, oh, just making sure that with every like 5 people we interview, we make sure that there's one for each respective ethnic group or something like that. And that doesn't necessarily always guarantee that you're going to automatically have more. Now, just this is on diversity of ethnicity. You'll have different ethnic groups get brought in, but I really think it's more on the education of the current workforce and the leadership, because if they consistently look at employees, new hires from the same lens as their forefathers, they're going to make the same inferences. They're going to make the same type of decisions. But if they're taught to look beyond skin or look beyond, the ethnicity of that person, then they can also kind of eventually get there. So that one is a longer route, because re-educating grown-ass men, grown-ass women, that's a long journey, right? But some things that companies are also doing right now that helps foster that diversity is taking the names off of CVs. No more like doing blind interviews, where as in blind as in like you can't see the person. So like it's just like you're just talking to like just a blank image and it has a fake name on there, like John Doe or whatever. Things of that nature that takes the opportunity away from someone to prejudge that candidate.
Interesting take.
I think that's the way to go. Sign somebody a number, interview them, look at their qualifications, and just hire them. That's going to be your purest form of hiring. And if you come out with more race than the other, you can't say someone wasn't fairly hiring. More gender than you can't say that someone was not giving other people the chance. So if the gender's removed, names removed, race is removed, and you're number 546 and you're my slot, and then we do an interview and it's over Teams, you're blanked out, has your number on it, it may like distort. Like I would say, like there's a possibility you can tell someone's race by the sound of their voice. That is sometimes a thing. So it's just like, hey, however you have to make it as neutral as possible, then that's how you're going to get your best hiring, because you're getting the most qualified candidate for the job. And that's what employers should strive for. Is there favoritism? Is there nepotism? Of course. There's some people that get jobs that are just not qualified for it, but you know the owner or know whomever. That's going to happen. But if you're having an open hiring process that's on, LinkedIn or whatever, insert name of hiring company here, then hey, your number, here's your credentials, go forth and try to get that job. I think that's just the best way of doing it.
So I have a question then, I guess, to play on it. Doesn't that also kind of like this idea of trying to do the anonymous, recruiting and whatnot? Doesn't that also kind of particularly open up a can of worms? Like particularly, let's say, if you are a person of color and you get hired by an organization that has a particular disdain towards Black people, you get the job now, you're in there, and then you're not getting the support you need and everything that you need to kind of make you an effective employee, like essentially trying to make you fail. Like, wouldn't have been better to have not received the offer from the jump, because they were able to see who you are and they know, okay, we don't want any Black people here? Or does it still, do you feel like, coming in and then getting whatever treatment you get is just subject to whatever organization that is?
There's a process, right? So you can go to HR can screw you over, but you can file a lawsuit, right? So you have straight up facts, right? There's no opinion about it. You were mistreated, you were hired based off your qualifications, and this is going on. If you're really smart and you're really good and understanding how to go through a process like this, then it's like, no, like, because it's a double-edged sword. You can't have it both ways. You can't sit there and say, oh, the backfire is that you're going to get mistreated, so we need to put it in there. But then you put it in there, then the problem is you're not hired because you're Black or you're whatever. So pick your poison. If you want your poison to be, I'm not hired because I'm Black or a female, that's your poison. But you can't have it both ways. So yes, you're going to get hired into a company that may not be favorable towards a certain ethnicity or certain gender, but that should be put out there as well, right? So companies should have to file, or like there should be reports of companies, which I think actually gets done. I don't remember the name of the site, but like, 80% of people prefer to work for this company, like 20% of people prefer to work for this boss. Like those numbers are out.
Glassdoor, there's a lot of
So like you can figure that out, but that's on you to do the research on the company that you're applying to. So accountability and responsibility. So one or the other, yeah, you really can't have it both ways. It's going to be a drawback to one. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting because I know like this affirmative action thing that's also going on that's taken over the news recently too. But to the question, yes, diversity is essential. I think it gives different perspective, like my cousin said. I mean, I think one other thing that companies do that I think it kind of in a way eliminate potential candidate as well is some of this assessment that they do as well. And I think this should also look at that because I think based on your background, you may not be great at taking those tests. I don't know, like, there's some of those assessment I think they might be geared towards a different mindset. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's a way to kind of weed people out as well. So
Yeah, some
so I
companies
think
recognize it.
if your qualification and you perform well in the interview and you sound like you know what you're talking about and you have proven records of the effectiveness of some of the skills that you have in your resume, I think that should be enough. And something that also companies do is like this rounds and rounds of interviews. It's also extremely excessive and they should minimize and really target like what they're trying to get to, right? So I think some of those ways are tactics that I think companies should maybe look at. Chunky, I see you making faces there. What do you have to say?
I can speak to that
Yeah,
completely.
go ahead.
So there was a job that I had that had 1, 2, 3 rounds of interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I do a written portion, so making sure that I can write and not misspell my name. Second was a panel interview, right? And there were just questions that were just fired out. Like there's no real prep for it. Understanding the type of job I was going into, like I had to have like a basic knowledge of it, and they would assess that level of knowledge, right? So if I'm starting to hit certain basic questions, they start to make it more advanced. And then in that was a personality-based round, right? So in the panel was basic knowledge, and then let's see your personality. Then on top of that, there was another interview, right? To see how social I am with other people, right?
Mhm.
We're bringing you into this job to do a particular type of thing. We need you to have a particular mindset because that mindset is successful for the business model that we have. We can't mess around and hire someone that's not equipped to handle this.
Mhm.
That's going to
Mhm.
lead to failure. We're not saying like you're not you're no good. Like we don't like you because you can't do this. It's like, no, you have to fit this like rigid structure, right?
Yeah.
And I would say again to like put it on a different pedestal, like the most interesting thing I saw was like, all right, you think about Navy SEALs, right? There are some people that are amazingly fit, but they don't have good teamwork.
That's a great example.
And they literally like there was a clip that I saw that the instructor was like, hey man, you're great, you're amazing, but if I put you out in the field, we're gonna die. It's nothing personal against you, but you just don't fit this mold that's necessary for this level of warfare. You can do whatever else you want, you'll be highly successful at it. The dude was like, I don't want to quit. I don't want to quit. He was like, dude, it's not an option. Based off of my experience, based off of how this program's laid out, you're going to fail. And we can see your failure because you haven't been in it. And we've trained enough people to see like, this is what the outcome is. So we're trying to reduce that level of casualty. We're trying to reduce that level of failure for the quote unquote company. So we're going to cut you now instead of you getting to the point where you harm yourself and other people. So to me, multiple rounds, depending on the organization, depending on their goal,
Maybe
it's
necessary.
sometimes necessary. Not seeing like you're applying for McDonald's, you got to have like a 40-round interview to flip burgers or work
Well,
a kiosk.
Okay, well that's fair. I mean,
Service matters, man.
especially with
Service
that
matters.
type.
I
I
know
mean,
the
when
service
you
industry
use
matter
I
too.
don't know,
Don't play
service
that.
like
industry
No, no,
matters.
when you talk about life, like we're talking about
Fuck
like
all y'all.
policing and like some of this, like some of those life, like decision making, like it's critical, right, to life, right? So I get it. I think there are, yeah. No, that's fair.
I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
yeah.
there's yeah.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead, D.
No, Slots. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I mean, there's been instances where, particularly people, so similar how businesses will scale their businesses accordingly to keep a certain group out. There are instances where organizations will subject you to grueling interviews and conditions and have you probably in the coldest room in the entire office space to make the whole interview deplorable. Like
Bathroom all the way
I've
down the hall.
seen and yeah, I've seen things like that happening. So it can be a little difficult to differentiate, particularly
Yeah.
as a person of color. Am I being subjected to things because I am a person of color, or is this the standard really? And I think that's kind of like what the binary situation we're always kind of gripped with and trying to explore these things.
You want to see what I'm made out of? Fuck it. No problem. Put me in the coldest room. Put me in the hardest situation. You really want to test my capability? And if you still deny me from being successful, I'm not really what you want. And that's cool. I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I'm not everybody's best candidate. And we have to learn how to accept that, right? Just because I really want the job, like you have to we're in a society, like you have to give it to me because I want it. Because I believe I deserve it. But I'm going to get into a job just like what you said, Glenn, that's going to mistreat me. Do I really want to be in it if they're already doing it from the jump?
Nope.
So I have to be accountable with myself and say, nah, this ain't for me. But if you want to test me, you want to see what I can do, I got you. Say less. I'm going to push through all this better than everybody else. Or I'm just going to fail. This is what it is. Failure is part of life. I can't tell you how many passes I dropped, how many deadlines I've missed, but that's part of being a human being. We're fallible. So you have to understand as an individual, we all have limitations. And my limitations is not the same as everyone else on this panel, right? I may do things greater than everybody else. I may do things horribly worse, which has been proven several times over. But the whole thing that makes the difference is the feedback I'm willing to get and act on that feedback, right? I'm going to be conditioned to be a better person tomorrow. I'm going to be a great fit for another company that's going to pay me my value, if not more. But am I going to go to a company that I really want that's just going to undervalue me and not going to pay me enough?
Yeah, but I think as a black man or a black woman or as a black person in general, like, there's it kind of like bring the question about being twice as good just to accomplish one thing that our counterparts are able to accomplish fairly easily, right? So I get it. I love that mindset. I think it's a winning mindset. It's, survivor of the fittest, right? That's that mindset, right? Which is ideal especially for you, knowing your background. So, but just from a general speaking though, I think it's ideal to just get us all on an even plane, because I think that's really what we all fight for. We don't want to be treated any different. We just want to be given the same opportunity. Want to be just as bummy or just as average or just as whatever, and be given opportunities our counterparts are given, right? So we don't want to be like the best in our class just to get that same job, right? So
I'm gonna throw another
so that's really what it comes into it.
And I'm gonna pop a flare.
All right.
The reason why I got into my job so quickly was because of my ethnicity. I shit you not, there were people waiting years.
Okay.
And I got in quicker because of my skin color. Sometimes
that's great. How do you feel about that?
But is it though?
It is.
Is it great?
Once again, talks about diversity, right? They needed more of people like me, right? To make a better organization. So what they did, they filed it appropriately. I met all the basic qualifications. Everything that was basic, like everything's good across the board. There wasn't anything that stuck out. We're just like, all right, he's this color, we're going to take him. It's like, hey, we're going to move him to the higher point of the list and start pumping them through. They meet the qualifications. There's no reason to make them wait. We're trying to create we're trying to mirror society, right? So the percentage that's in society, we want in here, in our organization. So now we're matching, we're actually diverse. So no one can't say anything like, hey, you're not meeting a certain goal. Like they're meeting it or trying to meet it, right? Someone may say that like, oh, that's favoritism, that's fucked up. That shouldn't happen because you're getting pulled ahead of me. It's like, well, do you want diversity or not? Yeah. So with diversity comes with results, right? It comes with not consequences, but like things that are going to get done differently. So I want a diverse workforce. So if a woman gets hired to a position higher than me because they're trying to make a certain level of diversity there, knowing that I'm in the pipeline to come up next, if she got put number 1 or number 5, whatever, I'm eventually going to get it. Because I understand the importance of diversity. So am I going to take it personal? I shouldn't. Because when I move up and work with her, she's going to give a different perspective that I don't have, right? Which makes the company stronger, which makes me better, which means they'll be able to see my blind spots and vice versa. So I'm in a better company that showing value. So I'm not misconstruing that value as in something personal. I'm looking at like, all right, my company's trying to do the best they can with the means that they have. This is someone I want to stay with, because when something goes wrong with me or I need something, they're going to make it happen because it's proven.
Yes, a question, Chunky. Now, like with the affirmative action law that recently got removed, right? So, would you have gotten the opportunity if it's today? Like, I'm guessing they wouldn't hire you, or like, is it doesn't that remove that requirement now that you talked about? Or
For
I
who
guess
I work for now.
we are what?
For who I work for now.
Okay,
It's
but I guess that rule doesn't, it maybe doesn't apply to you, but it does impact maybe the future version of you in a different space, right?
it
Because
applies, but it didn't have a true bearing on how they went about hiring, right? If that makes sense. So like
yeah,
they
okay,
needed the numbers. Affirmative action doesn't make a difference. It helped, but now that it's gone, it doesn't reduce what they're trying to do to bring that back in, right? It
yeah.
doesn't have a true bearing. It only increased and made it easier or better. But now that it's gone, it's just like we're still going to do the same thing because we need this.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think it comes back to the company's mission and their value. So, like, if their mission is to kind of keep driving diversity, inclusion, equality, all of that, they will maintain that, even though the federal rule is no longer in place. So we'll
There
see
is,
how like what the next 2 to 5 years looks like
Yeah.
without the rule. We'll see if
I'm interested
all
to
of us
see.
out
I
of
think
work or not.
a key thing that
Yeah.
Camden Chunky mentioned there as well was that he still met all the base requirements for the job. And I think with affirmative action, the first people think of is just that any Black person off the street is getting these jobs and positions. And it's like, no, it's like these are people that still met the requirements needed to fulfill the job, and that it happened to be a person of color. So they have diversity is a push within the organization. They have the right to hire whoever they feel is a right fit. So let's jump into this next question. Particularly outside of just getting the job, but some of the things you have to deal with while being at work. And as we're trying to push for a more diverse workplace, or as organizations are making that push, do you feel as a person of color that it's your responsibility to essentially address or educate others on like workplace discrimination? And do you feel equipped to do so? And
Yes. And yes.
go
Stir
ahead,
pot.
Chunky.
I'm out.
Go ahead and start.
I'm just stirring the pot. Who ends up you gonna call on, let them go, and I'll get back to mine.
Nah, go ahead. You already took the initiative. We like that. We like initiative.
Yeah. If I rather do it than someone else that's not of my ethnicity do it. Right. So I can speak towards it. Is it easy? Is it fun? Nah. But I'm the most fit person to say something about it. How I articulate it makes the difference, right? Am I sitting here trying to educate you or ram information down your throat? So I'm going to say like, hey, you have a question, I'll try to answer it. Not everybody's built that way. So I'm not going to say that every Black person, every person of color, of every gender, of every religious background has to speak for who they are for everyone else. It's person dependent. Me, I can do it. I have the education, I have the experience, and even when I fail at it, I'll still learn more or call someone else, right? Like, hey, I got to answer this question. Let me tap my resources, right? I'm at a loss for this, but I know someone else who has to answer it. So using my network to figure out how to answer this.
I mean, I think for me, I mean, I'd be prepared to do it. I feel like I've been educated enough on how to do it. And I think in general, I tend not to look at people solely based on ethnicity. I think, but I will say one point is, the qualifications of the job, and as we kind of talked about, or with the multi-level interviews and things like that, just as much as you are looking for the opportunity, the company is looking to fill that opportunity. They're looking for people who want to truly be there. So I think one thing is just, have that in mind. It may not necessarily be because of your race or, your gender that sense with theirs, but it's just something to keep in mind, when looking at a career path and looking at a company to go to. But again, so for me, I feel like I can be comfortable in that sense. I feel like I've been trained in that sense to make those type of inferences, and I would not be biased in doing so.
Yeah, I would say me personally, before we jump to the last question, I would say I don't think it's Black people's responsibility to kind of speak on these things. Like, to assume that we're all kind of just carrying this knapsack of just, I guess, Black history knowledge or workplace discrimination knowledge, like, it's kind of unfair only because we are a marginalized group. And I just think that we're just no longer being viewed outside of being a victimized or marginalized group. We're not being looked upon as individuals. And quite frankly, not all of us feel the same about all things. So I would say, like, I would want someone that's knowledgeable in that regard. Like, I've had the personal experiences where I'm being asked things like, okay, do Black people have cable? Like, does everyone in Jamaica smoke weed? And like this like stupid shit like that. And I'm just like, come on, are you serious? Like, what world do you live in? You know what I mean? Like, I'm being asked things about Martin Luther King and all this other stuff. And I'm just like, okay, I'm grateful that I do know it, but am I being asked this solely because I'm a Black person? Or do you know that I'm aware of these things in advance or whatnot? And then if I don't know the answer to these things, am I any less Black? You know what I mean? So it's kind of like this situation where you're always seeking validation for yourself, when the reality of it, I just want to come here, do my 9 to 5 and be out. You know what I mean? So to me, it's just a very tricky situation, but don't assume that every person of color is suddenly an activist. You know what I mean? Like, some of us just want to do our jobs and clock out and leave and call it a day at the same time. Like, if you want information about Black people, there's a whole internet that can give you that.
That's fair. That's fair.
So, all right, last question on the representation piece. Should non-Blacks be allowed to head BRG or Black Right Groups Matters, or educate others on Black issues? And I'll start off with Fran, since you're the inspiration behind this question.
Yeah, no, I think there's a level of partnership and that's needed there, because we do need allies to drive any work related initiatives. But as far as them leading it, I think it has to be led by a person of that group, because they are the one who actually know the struggles, they know the things that that's missing from work, that like some of the pros and cons of working in that work setting, some of the things that actually needs to be changed. And you can see that from your lens. If you're like, for example, a white man, is I know it's difficult I feel like to experience, to really understand that struggle, but I think you can try your best to understand it and be an ally. And I think we do, especially like at a company like mine, we have sponsors. You have a sponsor, like a VP person who sponsor your group. It could be the LGBTQ, the Black, the Asian, all of it, there's a leader who's sponsoring your group, because from any kind of work event that you do, like, there's someone who needs to fund it. So that person is an ally of that group. So, and it could be any person of any race. So I think there's that level of connection that we do need there. So, but short answer, no, that person should not be leading it. It should be from that group that should be leading it for sure. And if they don't have one person in the company that should be leading it, go hire one. I'm just saying.
I hear that. Any other takes on this last question?
I mean, for me, I'll just add that I don't know. I mean, it's funny because the audience may not always know, but we are prepped on these questions in advance. And I thought about this, and part of me was like, yeah, it should absolutely be, someone of the same ethnic group, because they've lived that same experience. But at the same time, some people don't live that same experience, but have the association based on race. And there are people who literally go to school and do African American studies and but they're not Black, So I'm gonna say, which is, I feel like Chunky's gonna kill me for this, but I'm middle of the fence, because I've really, really thought about it. That I feel like there is no definitive answer for me, because of the way that society has kind of evolved in a sense where you may have someone who's literally spent their whole lives. I mean, I spoke to this one guy who literally was he was Doctors Without Borders, and he was in Uganda for the past 40 years, like working over there, learning their culture, eating their food. Like, he has a Ugandan wife. Like, are you gonna say that he doesn't like know Ugandan culture because he wasn't born in Uganda? You know, that he can't speak or advocate for other people from Uganda? Like, I would disagree. So for me, you know, I don't know, middle of the fence, which is not a true answer, but
I mean,
Chucky's
he will be
shaking
a
his head.
member. I mean, I think in the African Descent Network, we have non-black, people that are active participant in the group who are actively contributing to the improvement and the betterment of that group. So I think that's where, like, I think the ally and the partnership come into play.
Mhm.
And when I say like Ohio one, yes, obviously if there's a need there, and your company and it's obvious, you can work within the scope of the company of the people you have within your team, especially if you're a small company and you're a growing company. Yes, maybe there's a need for. I mean, I guess if you're a growing company and you don't have that people in there, then I guess there's really not a need for that specific group. But so I kind of want to like restate that when I actually thought about it. If that group is not in your company, then there's nobody driving it. There's no need to have a representation of it. But
I disagree. Sorry, I disagree. The reason why I disagree
okay.
is Chuck's gonna kill me again. The reason why I disagree really quick is just because if your goal is to increase diversity within your organization,
Right.
you should be increasing diversity within your organization, representation of all ethnic groups. It doesn't. So it's like saying because you don't have black people, you're not gonna celebrate, have Black History Month or the appreciation of Black History Month. So something of that nature. Like, that is not enough. I feel like just because you don't have black people in your workforce doesn't mean you can say, "Oh, don't worry about Black History Month." It's not a real thing.
Go ahead, Chunky. Say what you need
No,
to say.
I literally had lost the thought, and like the entire time I was listening, trying to like retain what I wanted to add. All right, 3 things, right? Really quick. I'm not going to take up a lot of time. 1, do you want someone speaking about your experience that has not lived it?
No.
You asking a question? Oh, no.
Okay. Next thing, there's a difference between teaching something, being a professor in Africana studies, and living it. Is it
True.
not?
Right.
True.
Right.
Now, do I want someone talking about how I am as my gender, my height, my size? That's not me. Fuck no. But caveat, right? What D Black said, if someone has lived in my environment long enough and can speak to it, I do not mind it at all. Which goes with what you're saying, Fran, in a sense that someone else can just represent it, right? Just because you don't look like me and you respond like me, but you have to experience like me, doesn't mean you're not going to come off as strong as me, right? And you're talking about allies. So if I have someone that needs to speak towards a specific gender and race that looks the same as them, but can accurately explain what I go through, I'll take that all day long. All day long. And if I quote unquote hire someone or bring a company in to oversee it and explain it to people, even better, right? So at the end of the day, you don't have to be technically my ethnicity or mirrored me to speak for me if we're able to identify that you have lived this, right, for X amount of years and can actually speak to it. The other thing, if I had a choice between putting myself up there or someone similar to me, I would choose that. But nonetheless, the whole point is diversity and understanding. However that comes across, however that works, I'm 100% for. Fred Hampton said it the best. He's looking for a rainbow coalition, right? Just because you look different from me, you speak differently, doesn't mean we can't work together. Doesn't mean we don't have the same issues. So if you're able to explain it, able to get it out there, and people are able to receive it, you're not put off by that person talking. Let's go. Let's do it. Shit will become better. Be a great world. No one have any fucking problems, but that's idealistic. And we're back to the same point today. First of all, pay me more money. I like more money. I'll hop ship any day of the week to get paid more for work-life balance. Thank you very much. I'm out.
Yeah, and that quite sums it up right there. And I would just say, like, as far as that goes, like, there's I think the two questions are like education and empathy. And I think for representation, it does help to have someone that looks like the people that are being impacted by these things speaking out towards it. But I'm not going to say it's going to be limited to that individual. Like if someone is well versed in the matter, know their stuff, and then let's be real, that there are some white people that have been victims of some atrocities as well, that may be able to sympathize or empathize. So to me, like not even all Black people have the same experiences either. Once you get into a certain wealth group, it's like they looking at you like y'all the poor Black folk. Like I don't mess with y'all. I don't deal with y'all Negroes. So it's like, to me, it's all about what you know and what your purpose is, as far as when it comes to like any type of marginalized groups, their rights and their issues being spoken of. I mean, I think when BLM started, I think Shaun King was one of the main proponents. I think even to this day, he has earned the most out of everyone out of the Black Lives Matters movement. And I believe he's biracial. So it's just like, you know, it doesn't always have to be.
I mean, that doesn't count
to an extent, but I mean, if you look at him, you would think that he's a white
that's
male.
Another topic. Let's keep going.
That was the one droppable.
From appearance, he looks like a white dude or a Spanish dude, so you wouldn't really know from appearance.
I follow him, and I know he deals with that a lot, and he's constantly fighting against that narrative. But but keep going though. I just
great
feel
things,
like
it doesn't matter.
He's getting shit done though. But
he is. And you see what happened to the Black Lives Matter founders, right? So, and they're black. So, I mean, to me, it's about the content of you as the individual. That's really going to drive it. And white folk use our privilege and help try to elevate some of these standards, bro. Real talk. Use our privilege for a good reason. But apart from that, thank you for tuning in on this episode. If you already forgot, check us out at Jerk Jollof Collar Pod on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram for more content. We'll be recording our next episode mid-July. We'll be talking about the reparations potentially coming to America, but we shall see. And apart from that, thank you again for tuning in with us, the World Most Cultured Pod. Check us out, Jerk Jollof Collar Pod. And on behalf of myself and the team, have a blessed one. I think these fellas want to say goodbye as well.
Peace
out.
Peace.